Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. And now, celebrating 15 years of broadcasting, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM, WPBQ 94.3 FM, as well as through our online outlets, including iHeartRadio. We're glad to have all of you with us as well. We're excited to welcome producer and now author Starr to our program. He has a new book that's about to come out. It's called Moment of Truth. We'll talk to Starr not only about what it was like for him to pen this book, but also the subject of the book, that being, of course, a pioneer named Guru in music. We'll talk to him about his time with Guru, what it was like for him to be able to see the impact that Guru made, but also now why this book is timely for all of us to be able to know the true story. Starr, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Hello to you, and thanks for having me, Cyrus. It's definitely a pleasure to be here, and definitely, always good to speak to my people out in the South, Mississippi, and around the country and around the world, whoever's tuning in.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. There's been a lot of buzz. I think that's an understatement, but we'll say that, about this book. Since it was first announced, Starr, that you were writing it. I mean, what has it been like for you to get to this point? I asked you this before we went on here because even the title itself says a lot, Moment of Truth. I mean, what is it like for you now to be able to share this story?
Well, it feels good. I mean, it feels great because it's been 8 years in the coming, and, it was a project that was started hopefully when Guru had first got diagnosed with cancer, we were really optimistic that we could beat it. There was just a lot of miracles that happened in Guru's life, and when the readers and the fans take a look at the book, they'll understand what I'm talking about. So this is a man that overcame a lot of obstacles and a lot of things that was thrown in his way, and equally the same in my life. I overcame a lot of obstacles and things that were put in my way, and some of those victories were miraculous, the divine intervention to some degree. So we believe that at that time that he could beat it. So this book started off in that sense of one more great beating of the odds for the master, and then as things progressed, and he understood that this cancer was not going to be beat, and he came to the conclusion that he had been got, he had been murdered. He knew it at one point, and then the book turned to something else. Where, listen, I'm going to trust you, Starr, to tell the story and tell it accurately, my life story and the ups and downs and everything else about it. And he entrusted me to do that, and it feels great that I've been able to do it. Yeah,
we're going to come back to that, Starr, because I think that type of for one thing, that privilege, but also the responsibility is a big thing. We definitely want to talk more about that. I want to talk about the legacy that I mentioned earlier, because when people hear the name Guru or think about Gang Starr, they think about, of course, the music. I mean, what was it like for you to see the impact the Guru was able to have, not only on the world of hip-hop, but also just on the musical landscape?
Well, and to go along with Gang Starr, you really have to include Jazzmatazz, because both of those functioned in tandem. Even though Jazzmatazz was not pushed as hard as Gang Starr was here in the States, but the worldwide impact of Jazzmatazz was astounding. And even here in the States, it's had so much impact that people don't really realize the impact that Jazzmatazz had. I mean, Guru was the first to go out with a band, the hip-hop artist to go out with a band. He was the first to really bridge the gap between the jazz artists and the hip-hop artists, because at that time in the early 90s, late 80s, the hip-hop artists and the jazz artists were against each other. The jazz artists were very angry at the hip-hop artists for sampling and not giving them credit, and to their mind, it was just ripping off their music, and in a lot of cases, selling many more records than the jazz artists were able to sell. And that resulted in a lot of hard feelings and litigation and so on. But with Guru, he reached out directly to the jazz artists for Jazzmatazz. So he went first to Dr. Donald Byrd and went to him and explained to him what his goals was and what he wanted to do with the Jazzmatazz series of albums. And Donald Byrd kind of spread the word to the other jazz musicians. And, I consider Jazzmatazz to be one of the most creative and groundbreaking series of records ever made, in any good genre of music.
Right. And I think that's it.
As far as,
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
As far as Gang Starr was concerned, Gang Starr was that preeminent underground hip-hop group of the 90s, and some might argue the kings of underground hip-hop, meaning that they really didn't get mainstream radio. They never really had a radio hit. And at the same time, I was involved with independent hip-hop music in the 90s and also with jazz and hip-hop. So I have worked with High C of the jazz hip-hop group Us Three, which had a major hit called Cantaloupe in the mid-90s, which was a sample from Herbie Hancock. But it was a big record, an MTV video, and so on. And, when me and Guru did finally hook up and link up with each other, it was one of those weird things, but a cool thing that I had, already had cut my teeth in the hip-hop jazz field, and it worked with a group and on projects that had commercially was bigger than the Jazzmatazz albums of the 90s. But in terms of impact, I think that Jazzmatazz, the 3 albums that came out in the 90s, was there's nothing that can compare with that.
Right. Solar, I mentioned we're going to talk more about the responsibility and the trust that was given to you to be able to make sure the story was told. I would be remiss, though, because it's your first time on our program, to not talk about your own musical journey. What is it that led you initially to music?
Well, I was musical from the time I was a child. I just gravitated towards being musical, so I started playing drums at the age of 7. Started writing songs around 7 or 8. Had my first band together at around age of 13, and even with the first band I put together, I essentially was the producer before I knew what a producer was. And this, leading into in those years was the beginning of hip hop as we know it. But the culture had been evolving. Like the components to hip hop had been evolving. Even going back to my earlier youth, which I grew up mostly in Bushwick and Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, New York, but there's also an area called Coney Island, which I grew up in, and there was a movie made called The Warriors in the 70s, and one of the characters in the movie of The Warriors was loosely based on myself, and all the characters in The Warriors were intimate friends of mine, or gang members. Had a different meaning back then, gangs, to right. what we know today to be the Bloods and the Crips and so on, but yeah, so I was the youngest member in that gang. So my experiences growing up in Brooklyn and in multicultural communities, it just opened my musical doors to all different types of music and culture. So that had a big influence on me in terms of once I started really getting into the new hip-hop scene and the evolving hip-hop scene, the evolving hip-hop culture, I became hip-hop DJ, which in reality was a producer, because I wasn't just able to scratch records, I was a musician. So I was able to also understand the drum breaks, play some of the drum breaks actually, by listening to them. And also, I was also multi-instrumentalist, so still am a multi-instrumentalist. So I could play bass, I could play a little guitar, I could play keyboard, and all of these things came into play in terms of influencing musically. But, with the thing with hip-hop, when it first came into its inception, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about fame. It was really about the culture. Right. So I had the purity of growing up in it and experiencing it in its purity and being a part of it. It was a living, breathing thing, and each person in it had a responsibility and had a role. It's, I compare it a lot to the civil rights movement. Even though you'll have Martin Luther King in the front, you'll have other components of people who were thrust out into the spotlight, but they're not the movement. They're not the civil rights movement. It was the people themselves that made that happen or brought it to what it had to be. The same thing with hip hop. When we hear about Grandmaster Flash and Kool Herc and these guys, certainly important figures, but really hip-hop was about the culture. It was the people who were living it and breathing it, like myself, that really made it what it is.
For sure.
What it was.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's that legacy that people will continue to remember Solar, especially, as you continue to go forward and as they get ready for the release of this book, Moment of Truth. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome producer and now author Solar to our program. We're talking with him not only about what it's been like for him to do what he loves when it comes to music, but also being able to work with, of course, someone who has made an impact in music himself, that being G.U.R.U of Gang Starr, who has been able to do so many amazing things and left behind such an amazing legacy and left that responsibility with you, Starr. So I want to talk about that because, of course, we're all going to be eagerly waiting on the release of the book, and we'll let our audience know when they'll be able to get that. But, I mean, what was it like for you to think about what this meant, to be able to get this responsibility from Guru?
You know, it was sad, to be honest. It was not something that once I realized, you know, that the situation had taken that turn for that direction, it was sad, but at the same time, as we were like brothers, you know. So for, you know, once we linked up, and I go into it in depth in the book, you know, most people would know. You know, you hear about a artist-producer relationship, you know, and you hear about tons of them, but how many of those relationships are really close brotherly, you know, friendships? And There's no way for most fans to know whether it's just a business relationship or whether there was a great friendship that emanated beyond just the music. In the case of me and Guru, I believe it's probably one of the greatest stories of friendship and you know, brothers from different mothers ever told in the music industry. I think the closest that's been seen or heard in the public arena was kind of Brian's song, which was a story about athletes, and you know, that came out in the 70s. So it was kind of, you know, some people that were familiar with both that brought that to my attention, like kind of the story in the book and the movie kind of follows those lines. So we were great friends, and we were brothers, and we lived like brothers, and we approached life together as brothers that just kind of, we were almost like brothers that got separated at birth and then found each other later. That's like how tight we were. And and I was the godfather to his son, and he's the godfather to my son. So yeah, there's a lot of responsibility that fell on my shoulders. And fortunately, unfortunately, Guru, you know, saw the good, the bad, and the ugly coming, you know, before he demised. And you know, he also let me know that was going to be the case. And no matter how hard I tried behind the scenes to avoid the ugly, I was powerless to stop it. It was like a tsunami. It had its own course already. So you know, I had to navigate that negativity, and then on top of that negativity, you know, not to jump too far ahead, but these people who emanated this type of filth and garbage and lies and you know, just flagrant, disgusting rumors and such, they actually went to court to stop me from telling Guru's story, or you know, to even fulfill Guru's will of what he wanted to have done. So, you know, there had to be a court battle and also a court decision in my favor, which allows this. So some of the reason why this has taken this period of time was that, let the courts make a decision, and they've decided in my favor, and now I can proceed with and put that out there and let people hear the truth, the real truth of Guru's life and the way he wanted it told. So a lot of this, when you read the book, you know, you'll get a lot of my flavor of how I tell a story, and you know, and try to make it as interesting as I could, not only just about Guru, but about the music industry and what goes into making a superstar like Guru and somebody like me, you know, who's produced some of the biggest and best in the world, and you know, have done it at the highest levels. I give insight into that. I give insight into the inception of hip hop, because what's happened now, in my opinion, is that we've reached a point in hip hop where hip hop doesn't resemble hip hop anymore. So when we listen and look at what's going on now, it's almost, you know, almost completely divorced from what it originally was. And a part of Guru's mission all the time with Gang Starr and with Jazzmatazz, and then myself with Guru and Solar, and we started a movement and a label called 7 Gram Records in the mid-2000s, and we produced what most consider to be the epitome of the Jazzmatazz franchise, which is Jazzmatazz Volume 4, which we put out in 2005, and basically reinvigorated the whole scene around us, around the hip-hop culture. We put a band together. It was a very important and influential time for what we were doing and the voices that we were putting out to the world. A lot of that got drowned out, unfortunately, and willfully this book will bring some attention back to the mission that we were on. We were on a mission to stop what we saw coming, which was going to be a generation of hip-hop artists that were going to be divorced from the root, from what hip-hop was really about. And we were also on a mission to eliminate the negativity, the violence, and the killing, and all of this stuff, and it was succeeding. When you look at 2005, you look at the artists who we were collaborating with Common and Talib Kweli and Black Alicious and Angie Stone and Jaheim, and you know, the list just goes on and on. Gym Class Heroes, who were a fantastic group in the 2000s, and Slightly Stupid, a very influential rock group, and you know, a lot of the music I was doing were collaborations with major rock groups from the 70s, like Seals and Croft and so on. And, we were on tour with major artists of different genres. So we'd be out with Niles Rodgers of Chic, and we'd be out with the Ramones, and, and Radiohead. And it was just amazing the kind of doors and stuff we were kicking in. We were performing at festivals that had never had hip-hop artists. We were the first hip-hop artists to perform at the Jazz Cafe in London, which anybody who follows hip-hop closely will know now that every hip-hop artist, kind of the 90s and the 2000s, go to the Jazz Cafe. So we were trailblazing, and we were, having a great success. And when you look back at the time, most of this was put to bed. And then almost to the day that Guru returned, you see it's gone right back to the dirt and filth that it was before. Just yesterday, a young rapper just was murdered out in Miami. Right. So it's right back to the nonsense.
It's two things you mentioned, Solar, I want to talk about. Then we're going to remind our audience, of course, how they can stay connected with you, and, of course, when they could look forward to the release. You talked about, one, the responsibility, of course, of accurately being able to tell Guru's story, but also you talked about, what he saw coming. And, I think it is unfortunate that we live in a world that it seems as though the negativity or the darkness, as we call it, a lot on this program, seems to cloud out, all of the light and the goodness that's out there. I mean, what has been the biggest disappointment for you since Guru's death? Because I can imagine it has to be hurtful to not only, to hear and read things, but also to realize that people were getting away from what really mattered the most to him, and that was the music. So what has that part of the challenge been like for you?
It's been and still is, a major goal of mine is, and that's the biggest part of his book, is to correct all of that, because when an artist of his magnitude passes, what's been the case all the time, I've never seen one case like Guru's ever in the history of any kind of form of fame, is you embrace what that man accomplished, what his career was about. Instead, they made up lies and rumors that weren't there when he was alive. And in other cases, that these lies and rumors or whatever, these other things that floated around, when they died, they put that aside and embraced, his work. And in Guru's case, it went just opposite. They put the work down and made up something to put in place of his work, in the form of, like you said, the darkness and the filth and the lies and the rumors. So I never saw anything like it, and still haven't. So it's my major intention to shine that light on this aspect, and for the world and for the fans and everybody to see, and not only see, but understand what kind of people would do this and the questions that need to be asked. And those questions are there, and I outline a lot of things in the book so that people can really get a clear understanding as to who was behind this. And the first thing that I say to all the fans and everybody is that anytime you have somebody that wants to defend somebody's reputation and legacy, regardless whether they were an important person or maybe they weren't, so important in fame, but they might have been an important person just in life, Anytime somebody comes to the defense of somebody who can't defend themselves and is then attacked publicly so that they can't even speak the truth, and then there's a court case, actually literally they're going to try to have the court stop them from telling the truth, you have to then wonder what are these people about and what role did they play in all of this.
For sure. Well, it's a lot for us to be able to uncover. I have to ask you this question to kind of broaden the conversation a bit, Solar, before we let you go. Would you have imagined that author would be something that you would end up adding to your name?
It's funny. I was just saying to my son the other day that, the early reviews, some of the critics who have read the book, they've been, beyond complimentary as to my ability to be an author. And certainly with such a tough topic to tackle, and then have them say, I just wrote a brilliant book, a book that goes beyond what the negativity is or what happened or, how it happened, but just a book that's really exciting and thrilling to read. And when they put it down, they're looking for more, and they're looking for another book. So no, to answer your question, I didn't know author would be a part of my repertoire, so to speak, or my career. But now that I've done it, I really hope to write more books. And I think the people who enjoy my writing style and enjoy my book, I think they will be happy to hear that there probably will be more books in my future, and tackling topics and subjects that'll be a little bit more free for me as a writer to really express and dig into without, such a legacy and, like you said, such of a heavy load and responsibility, on my shoulders that I had when I wrote this book. But that being done, I feel great about the book.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot for us to be able to look forward to. Again, everyone, we've been speaking with producer and now author Starr, talking with him not only about his journey, of course, in music, but also in life and what it was like for him to work with Pioneer Guru, and now to be able to get ready for the release of the book, Moment of Truth. So, Starr, let our audience know, when will the book officially be released, and how can our audience stay connected with you?
Yes, the book will be released June 30th to all your major e-tailers for books, which would be Amazon and Kindle and Barnes and Noble, and also it'll be an audio book. And you can go on the website for the book, which is momentoftruthgs.com, and you can also follow me on Facebook, Starr Official, just the way it sounds, spelled like the sun, SOLAR Official, and the same handle for Instagram. And the book again will be available June 30th.
All right. So make sure you all do get your own copy of the book. Again, in the meantime, make sure you all stay connected with the website, Moment of Truth, as you heard him say, gs.com is where you all can go there, momentoftruthgs.com, and then stay connected with him on social media as well. Starr, thank you so much again for the time. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Cyrus. Thanks to all the fans, and keep doing your thing, man. You're a good brother, and I appreciate you helping to get this word out, man, and make this book a success.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great day.